Hey, and welcome to the Black Badger Gaming episode number one of Rising Sun. We came back and we're number one with a bullet with a game a lot of people are anticipating for coming out next year. Doesn't come out until April, but we got our hands on a copy at Gen Con. CMON had a charitable event where they gave away 50 copies, and we were one of the lucky few to grab a hold of it and bring it back just for you. So we got to play it, and now we're going to tell you what we think about it in our four traditional categories of theme, components, gameplay, and replayability. And why don't we start off with a theme? So theme, Rising Sun is obviously set in feudal Japan. It's one of my favorite themes for a game, and I'm a bit of a Japanophile myself. So if you are also a Japanophile and like anime or watching Akira Kurosawa films and just discussing them with people at work, then this is the game for you. I've heard some people try to say that this is just a Japanese theme slapped on like a Blood Rage, whatever, but I've not played Blood Rage, so I can't attest to that. But I can tell you that the artwork alone and the minis alone bring out the theme and where you feel like you're actually a samurai guy and fighting for land in ancient Japan. So I can't say enough about the theme. I'm going to go ahead and score it and let you know what I think about it. I'm going to go 9.5 because just they knew where to touch me here on this one. So all it's missing really for the theme, and it has pictures of ninja in there in the game on some of the cards and stuff. But you need a ninja. You need a little ninja figure. Like in what's the game? I'm blanking here. Settlers of Catan, where you got the robber.
Oh, yeah,
they need like a little ninja guy who goes around the countryside. You can hire and just like go kill somebody. That would be perfect. But it's not enough to keep me from loving this game. The theme on this game.
Yeah, there's no doubt the theme here is great. Again, not to go back too much to the old days, but anytime you have a theme that doesn't include zombies, I'm on board. So I may not be the Japanophile. Well, that's true. The Oni are in there for sure, but that's a different thing, and I like it. So I'm not the Japanophile that he is, but I do appreciate it, and I like it quite a bit. The artwork on this thing is pretty stunning, so they did a great job of trying to capture that feudal Japan era, the look and the thought, or just the feel of that time frame there. Yeah, for me, this is a theme that I think a lot of people are going to like. It's not something that's completely overdone, and they didn't just take the basic ideas and then kind of take that and slap it on top of it. They dove in a little bit deeper, and I think they did a great job. So I can't go quite to a 9.5 like my friend here, but this is a good theme and it's a strong representation, so I'm going to give it an 8. Now that's a strong score still, don't be fooled, but I can't go quite as high as he did.
If it were mobster Japanese, Yakuza, he'd be all about the 9.5.
Yeah, you have a point. I mean, personal preference definitely plays a role in this, and they definitely hit his sweet spot a little bit more than mine on this one, but still really strong.
They don't call me the board game black belt for nothing.
This is very true.
All right, let's go to component.
Components. Alright, so components on this bad boy right here. If you know anything about this game at all, certainly one of the things that you do know is that they promised a lot of components, a lot of minis, different things like that. I mean, this is a cool mini or not game, so right off the bat we might as well start there. This is a decent sized box, don't get me wrong, but there's a ton packed into this box. For what ends up coming out of this box, you would expect it to be one of those big like Shadows of Brimstone boxes or something like that. But so they definitely give you a bunch for your money on this one, and it's quality stuff too. These minis are really striking. The larger Oni figures that come in here, once painted, would just be stunning. So they hit it out of the park on the minis, but again, when it's coming from CMON, cool mini or not, you expect that that's going to be one of the benefits that you're getting. So, but then you go on to the rest of the components. The game board itself, the artwork is fantastic. I mean, we kind of talked about that earlier in theme. But again, you have to mention in the components section as well, because the artwork on this game really is really nice. They stuck to that time frame and really did a good job with it. And the rest of the components themselves are weighty. Your chits and your cards and different discs and things like that are not thin, and they really represent what they need to well. There's not, outside of all the minis, they're not just an overload of components, but you've got everything you need and it looks really nice. So that's a long way to say that this is, you're going to buy this game largely for the components and you're not going to be disappointed. I've got to give this a strong 9.0 for my components rating.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty high for him. I agree, but I mean, this is a game that if you are running any kind of role-playing game that's Japan themed, like Legend of the Five Rings, like we are about to do, this game you can buy just for the demons in the box. We'll throw up some pictures of them here. These things are like detailed, heavily ever since 3D printing and all that come out. They can get real detailed with this stuff. They make their molds from. It's almost too detailed because you got some human heads hanging off of some of these miniatures. But each one of the clans have a different mold for their daimyo, for their bushi, and for their shinto. So that's 3 different molds per clan, and then 5 clans, unless you did the Kickstarter. Now the Kickstarter I went back and looked at after we played this game because I didn't get in on Kickstarter. Chris don't Kickstart, but I wish I had, because you get literally an expansion for the game and all these other minis that are just beautiful. Oh, I almost cried because I didn't get on it. I may have to find somebody that has it and hit them up for it. But the miniatures alone are worth this game. But then on top of that, the artwork on the board's laid out great where you don't feel like you're getting cramped with all the armies going into different areas. Like I said before, I think the only thing I have against it is it doesn't have a little ninja guy like the old Shogun game used to have. But they give you different colored discs to put at the base of the monsters so you know who's in control of the monsters. They give you different colored discs for the daimyos and the shinto. It was thought out, I'll put it that way. And then they all managed to fit it inside this box, which weighs about 60 pounds, it feels like. But I'm going to go components-wise. You give me a lot of components, I'm happy. I'm going to give it a 9 as well because I think it's got a ton of stuff, and that makes me happy inside. I think that sums up that, so let's head over to gameplay. So, gameplay. When I first got into it, I think the biggest complaint I have about gameplay, I'll go straight to the complaint. The biggest complaint I have is that when you start the game, maybe it's because of explanation, but I didn't feel like I knew why I was doing certain things. The tea ceremony in the beginning where you form alliances, I didn't know why I would want to do an alliance other than let's gang up on that guy. Because when you look at the board, it looks like traditional games like Risk or Shogun or something where the purpose is to take Japan, so you're going to be basically fielding an army and running over people. But the battles, even though they have a purpose, are not why you're doing necessarily the joining up with someone else. And so the first round of the game we played, I was a guy without an ally, so I thought I was being gypped and that I was going to suffer for it. But then that's when I found out the betray card was in there, and that I can actually use the betray card to my advantage and just kill other people. And so that was the ninja effect, but they need a little figure for it. So the gameplay, it's got a lot of moving parts. It's one of those games where I think Eric Lang is becoming famous for, where you got to track everything or else somebody's going to run over you. Because if you forget about your honor and you focus on the Shinto shrines, then someone is going to bypass you back here, and then at the end of the game they're going to roll over you with their victory points because you don't see it coming. And that's the way it happened to us first time I played it, because I thought I was in control, thought I was winning, and here comes the guy, the turtle in the hair. The turtle ran past me because I was counting my victory points and not looking up. So there's a lot of different ways, and the beauty of it is that the gameplay allows you to customize your strategies based on what you like. So if you're the cards that you can buy and purchase from the different demons and so forth. We had one guy who just bought all the demons up and was trying to beat everybody down with the demons. He didn't win. We had a guy who bought up all the cards that just gave you points. He won. And then we had the guys that, would just try to control lots of territory and win battles. And the other thing that I didn't really care for, even though it's thematic, was the seppuku, which is in the wartime deal. The very first action is seppuku. Even though I know it's honorable and all that stuff from all the movies, it just didn't feel like I should get victory points for killing my guys, my own guys. I know it works out. It turns out it's mechanically sound. I mean, it gives you a way to, even though you're getting defeated, to getting something out of it. But I just didn't like it. It left a bad taste in my mouth every time I had to do it. So gameplay is strong. It's fun for me, but it's a lot. And so it's not for the faint of heart, which is probably, if you know anything about the game, you're probably not getting it anyway. So I'm going to go with 8 on the gameplay because it's very good, but you got to know what you're getting into. It's not just your, let's throw an extra game in at the end of the night kind of thing. It's got to be set up and staged.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a perfect lead-in for me. That would be, if you wanted to start with your complaints, I would say my only complaint was that first round, you're making your motions and you've played some games, so you have ideas of what you need to do, but it's not really clear how beneficial these actions are going to be for you right off the bat. But then by the time the third round comes around, you've pretty well got a handle on it. So there's a learning curve to this game, but I wouldn't say it's huge. So to me that means the gameplay is pretty solid on this. But there are a lot of moving parts. It's definitely an Eric Lang kind of a game. So you do need to make sure you don't get too self-involved and get too wrapped up in your own strategy, because you might think you've got the inside track on territory and that's going to give you the win. And as Chris had mentioned, you've lost sight then of the other paths to victory that might even be easier and quicker. So you've got to have your strategy working, but you've also got to keep an eye on the other people, what they're doing, and then you also have to try to keep up with all the different moving parts. So not a beginner's game for sure, not a game that you're going to sit down and play in 45 minutes. You've got to have a couple of hours, I would think, for your first playthrough especially. But on the flip side of that, the learning curve is quick. Even by round 2, I felt like everybody had a much better idea of what was happening, why it was happening, what avenue they were going to try to take. Is an ally somebody I really want, or do I want to go on my own? I can betray everybody else at any time. So to me, the gameplay, it's hard to say. It was sort of like a race car that hasn't been driven in a while. It was sort of a choppy start, but then once that motor kicked in and it started to hum along, it was smoother and it was a lot more fun. And then you realized, oh no, there's so much I should have been paying attention to, and do I have time to fix it before this game is over? But that's a lot of fun too, because I was sitting at the table playing and I was certain Chris had a victory wrapped up. It looked that way from the point track. And then here comes from out of nowhere 3 other players pushed hard and almost came through with a win, and one of the guys from the back came through to grab victory. So to me that's a pretty good sign of good gameplay, but just be ready for a little bit of a slow start, and for all those reasons I'm going to come in at a 7.5 on gameplay for this guy.
And I might add on the gameplay part that I talked a little bit about how it can change from game to game when you play. Part of that is the Shinto shrines. There are 7 different ones, but you can only use 4 around, and you draw those randomly. The seasonal cards, you can choose to put in extra season cards to affect which demons come out. So every demon might not come out every game. And so there's different ways to change the game up so it's not the same game. And so you can't get into that rut of, I know I'm going to win this time. You have to be aware that you might have one game where you have a couple of demons come out, another one where all of them come out. So it's another sign of a good game, I think, is when you can expect different results from the same game time to time.
Sounds to me like you're talking about replayability. So yeah, replayability. As Chris was starting to touch on there, one of the really genius things that they do, not just them, a lot of games will do this, but it's included in this as well. There is a way where you're not going to use all the components every game, so that immediately you know that each game is going to be a little bit different. And again, also you're going to be putting things out in a slightly different order each time. But another item to think about in replayability on this game is the T service, the making of alliances. You've got the option, or maybe even more than an option, at the start of every season or each round, alliances are formed between two players at the table. If there's an odd number of players, someone's going to get left out in the cold. But so each time, and not just every game, but each round, you're likely going to have a different alliance partner, and so then that changes things up too. There's going to be certain players that have a different style from you, but for whatever reason, depending on where you are at the board or where stages the game are, it's going to make sense for the two of you to make an alliance. And to me, I think that's great. I think that throws in that little something different, to where you're hoping that this person that you just made what you both know is going to be a temporary alliance with, you hope that they see that it's best for their game to work with you and not betray you, and at the same time, of course, the only reason you entered into this alliance is because you hope it helps your game out too. So I like that idea, and it changes from game to game, and I think that helps replayability quite a bit. And also, because there are so many different ways to earn points, you're not going to just settle into one way of playing this game, and I think that helps replayability tremendously. So maybe it's a bit of a shocker, but for me, my highest rating on this entire game will be its replayability, and I'm going to give it a whopping 9.0 for replayability.
It is shocking. I'm shocked. Some of the good points there, the tea ceremony, when we first did that in our first game, it was, like I said, I got left out in the cold. I was the odd man out, and I thought, well, this is, because you have to do the tea ceremony for every season. And so spring, summer, fall, you're doing the tea ceremony and forming alliances. It turned out that I had a different ally every season. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought this was going to, because I didn't know what it was for. And so when I was left out in the cold, I thought, well, that's fine. I'm going to be a loser here because I don't have an ally helping me out and watching my back. Well, take heart, because you will change alliances from round to round, and with good reason. And so, like I mentioned before, there's a reason, or there's something you can do as the guy who's the odd man out. So it balances very well. That adds to replayability. Also, replayability is, like I mentioned before, with the Shinto shrines. You'll have different ones every round. You'll have 7. Sometimes you won't even get out some of those. You can also play different clans. Each clan has a different special ability, which you could try to suit your gameplay. You could try a different special ability for each one. And there's also like 5 different ways to win in a rough count. You win by getting victory points, but victory points can be attained by winning battles, by having the most demons. There's tons of ways to get victory points, and so that's what you got to watch at the end. And so that can change the way you play. And I almost guarantee that the first time you play, the second time you play would be different than the first time you played, because you learn so much playing that first time. So replayability is pretty good. I'm going to play it again and again because it fits a lot of categories that I like, and I'm going to go with a 9 on mine as well. And so that it's going to put a pretty high rating on a game that everybody's waiting to see coming out next year. And so I hope we give you a little bit of hope. And to add on to that, we're going to walk over to the table where we got this set up and kind of sum all this up for you and give you our thoughts in the last look. All right, so here we have the fully set up board, ready to start play on Rising Sun. As you can see, it's everything we said it was and more. You've got your ancient Japan, which is definitely delineated, and they've even gotten on the borders. I don't know if you can see it. We'll do some close-ups. If it's a border between two countries, you've got the little dotted lines to kind of tell you who owns what. It's pretty busy, but I think once your eyes adjust to it, it's really easy to tell where the armies are because it's color coded. I don't think I'd added anything different to it except there's a lot of components that don't get to sit on the board, and I'm a big fan of having spots on the board for everything. But that board is huge, and so if you did that, you'd literally be having to sell a mat or something, which is not a bad idea. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see on here, like we were talking about during gameplay and replayability, there's an awful lot to keep up with. There's a lot going on, but they've got it laid out so nicely and it looks so good. It's pretty easy to keep track of everything. He mentioned the dotted lines between the different borders as opposed to the solid line when you're not bordering someone. Obviously, you've got your ship routes where you can get from islands to the mainland, or even from different parts of the mainland to the further parts away, that sort of thing. So, you can move around the board pretty quickly, regardless of where you're at. You've got your honor track, point tracks happening. This is where you're going to keep track of the battles that go on. You actually stage them in order, and that's done randomly at the start of each round. So you might think that one territory is going to be where all the battling goes on, and it might end up coming down as one of the last battles to take place. But you've got that clearly laid out in front of you there. Of course, your temples across the top. Don't sleep on those temples, people. That's where you're going to get some pretty powerful stuff. So. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that you need to try to keep up with. But as far as I'm concerned, they did a great job with laying it out, giving you all the components that you need. And it might be nice if you had some of these off-board items actually incorporated into the board itself, but they probably did that, as you said, as a space issue on something here. But you've got just incredibly detailed miniatures that are huge, but at the same time they're not overpowering the board once they get out there. Even once you start loading it up with all your different Onis, it works. It just really works well.
I don't think we had any problems ever with like falling out of a country. You could always tell what was in that battle.
Yeah.
You won't ever have any. You only have 8, 9, 10 miniatures per color, plus your demons you might be going on, and once you run out of miniatures, that's it. You can't pull any more. So Ronin are depicted by cardboard, so you can throw a lot of those on the battle, and it's no big deal. We never had a problem with overcrowding in a territory. That's why they made the board so big, though, so that you can throw this water dragon thing here on there, and it doesn't push everybody else out off the island. And the blue guys, we'll talk about a little bit about different components here, but the blue guys, their special ability is they can move anywhere on the board. These, of course, are your demons, which if anybody's good at painting, this would be the perfect opportunity to make these things fearsome and gruesome. You've got, everybody has their own little track. One explains everything that you can do here on the track. So it's broken into 4 seasons, with winter being the last, and winter is when you do battle. So you have spring, summer, autumn, and then winter. And each one of these, you lay out territories to capture, which is these cards. And then you start with the person with the highest honor, and you go around the board, and you start laying out cards here of what you're going to do for that round, the political mandate. So you can recruit, marshal, train, harvest, and betray. And we're not going to go into details now. We'll maybe try to do a video of an overview of the game. But on the other side of your card is your war advantages. So when you actually fight at the end here of every season, you'll have battles to basically, you spend this time setting yourself up for battle, and then you have the battle. And the shrines are harvested here, here, and here before the battle. and you use this thing by bidding. It's a bidding deal where you put it behind your screen and you tell what you're going to do and then reveal to see who bid the most. And remember, all ties are broken by the honor track. So this is a very powerful thing that I completely neglected at the beginning of the game. So, like I said, we said in the other part was that there's a lot of moving parts to this. There's cards. These cards that you can come out will have different things that will give you victory points. Some will give you, you can purchase demons. These shrines will move or change every season, so that they may not be the same ones now that they were the last time. There's just a lot going on. All this stuff, each territory has stuff you can harvest from, like money, Ronin, or victory points. And the only people who get that advantage are you and your ally, so having an ally, choosing your ally is important there. It's just a beautiful game, and it's a well-oiled machine. It's just a matter of knowing, to win it, you're going to have to know what all the parts are. And so your first playthrough will probably be your learning experience, like a lot of games are this big, and then your second and future games will be the ones that really show what you're made of, I guess.
Yeah, I do. I enjoy games like this for that very reason. Even if you don't win, you definitely are going to pick up another strategy that you can't wait to get back to the table and try out and see how that pans out for you next time.
So that we've already given our scores on each category, so let's throw that total up. And I think we all knew that was coming. And so I think everybody's going to be looking forward to this even more than before, and I hope that you, if you get an extra second here, please subscribe, check out our other videos, and we'll try to put links up so you can see our setup and our, maybe even a walkthrough.
Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks, guys.